What we would like to present to you today are the current results and future directions of the research-based exhibitions project, The Modern Idol, Henry Moore in the Eastern Bloc, which lies at the intersection of art history, exhibition histories, and the history of cultural diplomacy during the Cold War. Initiated by Alina, Șerban, and myself, joined by Lujza Kotočová, its core aim is to explore the history, impact, and artistic reception of Henry Moore's touring exhibition to Bucharest, Bratislava, Prague, and Budapest in 1966-67. Alina first encountered the topic as you will see, through the diary notes and the photographs of the writer Radu Petrescu took at the exhibition in '66. She was intrigued by Petrescu's desire to document the exhibition, and that he included it in his novel One Age in 1975. Myself, I have come across Moore's 61 exhibition in Hungary through interviews conducted with Mario Árvai for our earlier exhibition and book project, The Great Book Theft, the French book exhibition behind the Iron Curtain, that concerned a French touring exhibition, the material of which got mostly stolen by the visitors. Later, if you would like to take a look at the book, I have a copy with me. We discussed the possibility of starting a shared project at one of the meetings of confrontation sessions in East European art history, led by my and Ruben folks. And here we will try to change the slides. The first version of the exhibition project took place in Bucharest in 2021-2022 at the National Museum of Art, and two further versions are forthcoming, one in the Czech Republic at the Gallery of Modern Art at Hradec Králové in 2024, and one in Hungary. Also, in addition to the countries covered in depth by our research, we are preparing an English language volume which will examine all of Moore's exhibitions during state socialism and the reception of his art in the Eastern Bloc as well as in Yugoslavia, providing a complete overview of the artist's shows and legacy in the region.
Concentrating on the touring exhibition that developed through international partnerships and traveled across geopolitical borders, with our research we aim to cross the categories of local and global and examine how the specific cultural event changed as the show toured between various places and contexts. Before moving to the three case studies, which will briefly discuss the individual stories of Henry Moore's show in each selected country, it is essential to outline their broader context and name a few of their common denominators. On the subject of their organizational background, all four installments of the show resulted from a cultural exchange program with the Eastern Bloc managed by the British Council. In exchange for hosting Moore's show, the countries of Romania, Czechoslovakia, and Hungary had the possibility to organize similar events in the UK. Consequently, the meaning and intentions of Moore's exhibition were connected not only to arts institutions' missions or the interests of the general audience, but also to national and international diplomatic agendas. Such exchanges from east to west or from west to east constituted a double-way process which, on the one hand, enabled a mutual knowledge of what was happening culturally on both sides of the wall, and, on the other, demanded a highly attentive negotiation process on what was possible to bring in a context without damaging the political relations between the two sides of the bloc. Considering the broader benefits gained through the reconstruction of Cold War cultural diplomacy exhibitions, our intent hasn't been just the simplistic resurrection of this past exhibition from oblivion. Rather, by collecting photo documentation, press clippings, catalogs, books, and oral testimonies, we've been aiming to assemble a prolific critical archive which could expose the cultural and artistic responses on the local grounds, as well as the ideological patterns on information transfer, and as linking art history to its institutional conditions and other realms. Furthermore, we were interested in tracing relational histories and the evidence they perform in respect to the study of broader geopolitical processes, the exchanges in the professional field, and in revisiting exhibition as a valuable tool of knowledge transfer and alternative encounter challenging the experiences of art as they were framed by our official propaganda in these socialist countries.
Now let's turn our attention to Romania. The mid-1960s saw an opportunity to reconfigure the geography of cultural exchanges in Romania as new policies were adopted by the country's leadership, causing the tardy official disavowal of socialist realism. The Romanian-British cultural exchange program had its climax in 1966 with Henry Moore's touring exhibition, at the time the first major solo show of Western artists in communist Romania. The large-scale presentation at the Dallas Hall in Bucharest impacted the cultural and artistic milieus with an attendance of more than 44,000 visitors. The local reading of Moore's work prompted several national narratives whose enthusiastic rhetoric was undeniably double-sided. They either projected Moore as an epitome of Western modernity or highlighted components of his personal biography and aesthetics in order to benefit the strategies of local art history writing. The discussions surrounding the exhibition did nonetheless offer evidence that the local artistic and cultural life was stimulated by Moore's presence, in some cases shaping individual artistic careers or reinforcing ideas and tendencies already present within the cultural landscape. The event highlighted the complex connections established between local cultural strategies and international agencies, and the special role played by the exhibition in disseminating diplomatic agendas during the Cold War. The exhibition was the result of negotiations within the new cultural exchange program between Romania and Great Britain, signed in 1965. Romania accepted to host the Henry Moore exhibition in exchange for the organization of a similar exhibition of Romanian art at the Royal College of Art in London, titled Brancusi and His Countrymen. The exhibition offered a journey through the various stages of the artist's oeuvre, accompanied by large panels reproducing images of works that could not be included, and Henry Moore's statements about his early influences and sources of inspiration, with an emphasis on those pieces intended to be installed in natural surroundings. The retrospective character of the exhibition and the large number of works on display determined its wide visibility in the local press, but also the vivid interest of the artistic and cultural community. It represented for many people a cultural shock, as poet Marin Sorescu noted in his review, and I quote, "After leaving the exhibition, I experienced feelings of anxiety. One doesn't know where to place this artist. Somewhere in the geological past, or in the cosmic future, returning once more to his reclining figures, his augmented torsos, or the vertical inner and outer shapes, one realizes that the artist only sculpts the present, that his anxiety comprises, paradoxically, a lot of calmness." As Sorescu, other articles called into attention the monumentality of Moore's sculpture, the way it redefined space and its relationship with surrounding space, and last but not least, the syncretism of his forms. This last aspect brought to light a new type of reading of Moore's art. I'm missing page 4. Thank you. In association with Constantin Brancusi, many published materials evoked the direct or indirect relationship between the art of the two sculptors.
Moving our focus to Czechoslovakia, one needs to underscore that the local situation of the 1960s was interwoven by numerous exhibitions that developed throughout international partnerships. As the domestic cultural policy gradually relaxed, the country's official agencies revisited the approach to many of their foreign counterparts and began to negotiate the specific terms of renewed cooperation. In the case of the British Council, the situation started to change in 1962 when the bilateral cultural programs between the UK and Czechoslovakia were formalized, and Wesley Gordon Woods assumed the position of a cultural attaché. Woods, an amateur painter himself, managed to expand his contacts very early on, and with the support of artists and gallery workers from both collaborating parties, he took the patronage of multiple events in the field of visual arts. Under these circumstances, the first stop of Henry Moore's exhibition took place between April and May 1966 at the Slovak National Gallery in Bratislava, exactly 20 years after the first local introduction of the artist's works. The impressive display of several seminal pieces was received in exchange for the exhibition Cubist Art from Czechoslovakia, held at Tate Gallery a year later. Subsequently, the second of the installments, scattered between the interior and exterior premises of the Stenberg Palace, was hosted within the same year by the National Gallery Prague. As in the case of other exhibitions within the discussed series, both events were accompanied by well-attended press conferences and lectures given by British art historians. Since each of the mentioned shows operated on the boundaries of gallery practices as well as within the realm of foreign policy, their meaning needs to be evaluated from several perspectives. As for the diplomatic aspects, both exchange partners considered the events a success, while the official reports from the British Council representatives described them as a demonstrably effective channel for spreading Britain's values to one of the Soviet satellites. The Czechoslovak officials triumphantly presented the exhibitions as a means, quote, that fundamentally helped to push Czechoslovak art into the Tate Gallery, which was something that other socialist countries were failing to achieve, unquote. On the subject of the reception of the display collection, although the local press mostly approached Moore's works within the limits of older interpretative models, the 1966 exhibition was not only commented through the artist's contribution to the development of modernism. Since the liberalizing movement in society caused artistic and theoretical practices to develop in a more open dialogue with the progressive tendencies of the West, in several cases there also appeared pivotal efforts to re-evaluate Moore's role within the current art context. And these efforts were further supported by Moore's personal visit of Prague in 1969 and elaborated through, for example, a critical analysis of Herbert Reed's writing by Czech philosopher Jan Patočka, or by 1985 study by art historian Petr Wittlich.
Now moving to Hungary. Following the communist takeover, the British Council in Hungary was forced, as almost everywhere in the region, to cease its activities. Following the years of Stalinism and the defeat of the 1956 revolution, the Kader regime found itself in deep international isolation. It was a seemingly neutral field of culture where Hungarian authorities first attempted to counter this isolation and gain international political acceptance from the West. Henry Moore's earlier 1961 exhibition was a second instance of Western cultural import after the 1959 French book show. The selection consisted of merely a few small bronzes, accompanied with Henry Moore's photographs of his own works. From the British point of view, this material, selected and managed by the British Council, formed part of a touring exhibition shown in the Eastern Bloc only in Sofia in 1960, but toured all over the world, especially the global south. Hungarian authorities were quite reluctant. They wished to establish Western contacts, yet feared at the same time from the influence of Western culture that it might exert on local audience. In result, only brief announcements were published in the press, and the photos taken by the Hungarian news agency, that you see here now, at the opening were marked as, and I quote, not to be distributed for the press. Nonetheless, over the 2 weeks, almost 8,000 people visited the show. This 1961 exhibition, which was rather limited in scale, exerted an important influence. The modern figuration, as well as the scale and natural setting of the works, visible on the photos, opened up brand new sculptural possibilities, unimaginable before, given the recent experience of socialist realism. Moore's second exhibition in 1967 was already showcasing a substantial number of large-scale works, occupying almost the entire Múlcsarnok, the largest exhibition hall in Budapest. The show was a belated stop in Moore's tour in the region. The importance of the exhibition is attested by the fact that it was opened by Jenny Lee, Minister for the Arts in the government of the UK, and Miklós Borsos, a major Hungarian sculptor who in fact visited Moore earlier in 1963. Planned for 1966 due to bureaucratic processes of Hungarian authorities, as well as the insistence of negotiating the best possibilities to exhibit Hungarian material in London, resulted in the exhibition being delayed to 1967. Hungarian authorities managed to mount multiple exhibitions in the UK. In return, the Hungarian art treasures in the Victoria and Albert Museum and 20th century Hungarian art at the Royal Institute Galleries. The Moore exhibition, visible for a month, proved to be a success. Covered widely in the press, it was attended by almost 36,000 visitors. It seems nonetheless that not everyone was content with having more sculptures exhibited in Hungary. Pál Páczai, an established sculptor and professor at the Academy of Fine Arts, probably fearing of not being able to compete with the new trends, was expressing his negative opinion in a rather harsh way. And I quote, "They bring us this Henrik Moor," which is Hungarianized version of Moore's name, alluding to Moors, Muslim inhabitants of the Iberian Peninsula. So they bring us this Henrik Moor, this king of faggots, with his garbage punctured by a drilling machine. So he was rather hostile. Nonetheless, Moore's exhibitions were formative events. As art historian Marta Kowalowski, university student at that time, put it in relation to the earlier 61 show, and I quote, "That spirit, that breeze, that stormy wind that came through the door, it originated from him and blew forth Hungarian sculpture."
Our project offers three further important aspects that we cannot cover here in depth. These are the question of acquisitions, Moore's visits in the region, as well as visits to his studio and in Peregrine that can be seen as pilgrimages. Just for a brief mention, in the case of Czechoslovakia, two such visits took place in 1964 and 65 as a part of the longer group excursion organized by the relevant union bodies, and in the case of Hungary, it was sculptor Miklos Borzsós who visited Moore in 1963. A further important aspect that we cannot elaborate on here, but the exhibition series partially does, and the planned book will extensively cover, is the reception of Moore's art in the region. For instance, in Romania, the mediatization of the exhibition led to traces in the artist's diaries, impacted writers, and fueled the work of young sculptors with new ideas. In case of Czechoslovakia, one specific area in which the influence of Henry Moore was significantly present was the sculpture works situated in public spaces, while in Hungary, the impact of Moore's art is attested throughout the 1960s, and not only in sculpture and the fine arts, as one would expect, but also in film and even in poetry. And I want to briefly mention that Maria Klimešová, who is also present here with us, wrote a really well-structured study on the occasion of our Bucharest exhibition about the reception of Henry Moore's in Czech art. So if you're interested, it's available online. Taking the different contexts and perspectives into consideration, Henry Moore's traveling exhibition in the Eastern Bloc can be regarded as both a typical and an atypical event. It was a typical case of post-war traveling exhibitions, which were touring either on national, regional, or global scale. As we have seen, what made this show atypical was his regional and local context and the implication it had in shaping individual and collective accounts. And thank you for your attention.